come to me asking why your joy feels hollow, why your laughter echoes like a performance in an empty theater, why, though surrounded by people, you feel unseen, untouched, and unsheltered. I see you. You who hold the room together like gravity. You who light fires in cold places with your attention. You who pour life into every gathering with the beat of your voice and the mirth of your gestures, and yet, when the night folds into silence, you hear something else, a kietlicking, a drip, not of sound, but of essence. Something inside you is bleeding, isn't it? And no one notices. The paradox of the extrovert is not that they are always joyful, it is that they have become so practiced in manufacturing light, they can blind others to their own darkness. You, my friend, are not broken. You are simply misunderstood, most of all by yourself. You see, the world has rewarded your outward nature, your ability to meet others where they are, to feel the emotional air and adapt, to entertain, to absorb discomfort and turn it into comfort for others. These are beautiful qualities, but they come at a price when left unbalanced by inward truth. The unconscious, what I call the vast below, does not forget what the ego chooses to ignore. Every time you abandon yourself to attend to someone else's wound, your own begins to fester, not because kindness is wrong, but because unchecked self-forgetting is a form of inner betrayal. This is the bleeding I speak of. Imagine this with me. A healer who runs from village to village with a bag of herbs and the words of hope. He cleanses wounds, lifts spirits, and walks away before he hears thank you. But he forgets that he once stepped on a rusted nail deep in the forest. He numbed the pain with helping, but never removed the poison. Over time, it is not the forest that kills him, nor the people, it is the wound he never examined. You are that healer. Your smile is your medicine bag, your laughter, a kind of incantation, your presence, an alchemy that transforms tension into ease. But somewhere in your psyche, a voice you have exiled is whispering, please check on me. This voice is not weak. It is ancient. It is the archetype of the wounded savior, the one who learns to heal by being harmed, the one who gives away the medicine they refuse to drink themselves. Many myths sing of this figure. Chiron, the immortal centaur, wounded and wise, who could heal all but not himself. Or Prometheus, bound and bleeding for having gifted fire to others. Or the fool who smiles as he dances off the cliff. Unaware, he bleeds beneath the costume. Extroverts often carry this archetype without knowing it. Their outwardness is not always a natural disposition. Sometimes it is a compensation, a defense, a spell cast in childhood to protect the inner child from being neglected. If no one notices your silence, then make them notice your noise. If no one asks how you feel, then make yourself so useful they cannot ignore you. But the psyche never forgets, and so in the quiet hours, when the show is over and the audience has gone home, the inner child comes forward again, not with anger, but with grief. Why do you care for them? But not for me, it asks. In analytical terms, we would say this is a shadow, the unconscious aspect of the self that you have not yet integrated. But do not fear the word. Shadow is not evil. It is merely unseen. It is the unloved part. And in your case, dear extrovert, your shadow is your exhaustion, your sadness, your longing to be held, not because of what you offer, but because of who you are beneath the offering. You may think you are loved for your light, but ask yourself who sees you when you are dim. The great danger of being the sun in everyone's sky is that no one thinks to ask whether you miss the night. Introverts hide in their caves. Yes, but extroverts often hide in plain sight, in smiles, in stories, in service. And because the hiding place is so radiant, no one suspects. It is also a tomb. In dream language, and the dreams of extroverts are often loud, disjointed, strange. You may see yourself performing. Perhaps you are on stage and forget your lines, or everyone claps for you, but you feel nothing. Or worse, they clap, but no one looks at you. This is the dream's way of signaling disconnection from the self, from the divine center of your being. When the dreamer gives away all their energy to the outer world, the inner world responds with alienation. This is not a punishment. It is a summons. The psyche wants wholeness. It does not care about applause. It wants integration, the union of persona and soul, of the giver and the receiver, of the light bringer and the child who once wept in silence. You think your extroversion is your nature? Perhaps it is, but perhaps it is also your shield. The persona, the social mask we wear to survive, is not bad. It is necessary. But when we mistake it for our identity, we begin to the inside, slowly, quietly, performing our lives until we no longer recognize who we were before the performance began. Do you remember? Do you remember who you were before you learned you had to light up the room to be allowed inside it? You say you heal everyone. That is noble. But I ask you, have you ever let someone else hold your wound without apologizing for it? The true healing does not come from giving, it comes from receiving. Two, from letting another witness your bleeding without explaining it away, without covering it in jokes, without saying, I'm fine. The deepest work you will ever do is to sit with your own emptiness and not run from it, to befriend the silence you've drowned in music, to feel the ache you've disguised in activity, to stand before the mirror without persona and say, this is me. And I, to the Zervekare, extroverts are not hollow, but many become hollowed out, because they forget that a vessel that pours endlessly without being refilled becomes a relic. Beautiful, but brittle. Let us pause here in this inner space where your archetype is asking for permission to change. The healer, the performer, the friend, the giver, these are not lies, they are roles. And behind every role is a truth. You are not merely what others see in you. You are what you hide when no one is looking. The bleeding does not stop. Because you cover it with energy, It stops when you tend to it. When you trace its source, when you name the pain, you've refused to speak because you didn't want to seem selfish. But let me say something plainly, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. To look inward is not to abandon the world, it is to finally include yourself in the world you've worked so hard to heal. And so we move deeper past the visible layers into the dream realm, where truth disguises itself in riddles, symbols, and shadows. This is where the unconscious speaks not in words, but in images, and the images, when decoded, do not merely entertain the mind, they summon the soul. If you, as an extrovert, have found yourself dreaming of crowds where no one sees you, of voices that echo but never return, of stages that collapse beneath your feet, do not be afraid. These are not nightmares. These are invitations. The psyche sends such dreams to signal misalignment. When the outward persona grows louder than the inner self, the unconscious will create a dream world to restore balance. You may dance for approval in waking life, but in the dream, you fall, not to shame you, but to humble the persona, so the soul may speak again. Many extroverts, when faced with silence, panic. They feel as though silence is emptiness, but silence is not absence. It is presence. The presence of something long forgotten, the stillness within, the voice you muffled with charm, the grief you masked with enthusiasm, the fear you deflected with comedy. Do you see now? The performance is not inauthentic, but it has become overgrown. The real you, the original you, is buried under layers of adaptation. Psychological compensation, we call it. The more you were ignored as a child, the more entertaining you became. The more your needs were unmet, the more you met everyone else's. This is the economy of the wounded heart. But compensation, unchecked, becomes inflation, and the inflated persona eventually bursts, not with a bang, but with a subtle ache, fatigue, confusion, a strange sadness that haunts even the happiest moments, the soul calling home what was sent out too often without return. I have known many people who walk into rooms and change the energy immediately. They are radiant, magnetic, and they are also often the most wounded, because energy that flows outward without grounding becomes dissociation. And dissociation, though functional, severs you from the truth of your being. You have become the light for others, but you are terrified of entering your own darkness. Let us pause and consider this image a lighthouse. The lighthouse stands tall, unwavering, beaming light into the storm for lost ships. It is noble, but have you ever entered a lighthouse? Inside it is often empty, cold, lonely, built to serve, not to be lived in. Are you a lighthouse? You guide others, but do not allow yourself to dock. You shine outward, but leave the internal chambers dim. You were not made to be an eternal beacon. You are a human being, not a utility. You bleed, you break, you long, and those longings, if not listened to, become symptoms. Modern culture pathologizes the introvert but romanticizes the extrovert. But both are sacred if balanced, and dangerous if fragmented. The extrovert who has never turned inward becomes a mirror of others, but a stranger to themselves. They know how everyone feels, except themselves. They read a room but have never read their own journal. They cry only when no one is looking. And even then, they apologize to the walls. I ask you, who comforts the comforter? Who sees the seer? Who holds the one who always holds? If your answer is no one, then that is your work. Not to resent the world, but to reparent yourself. To become the one you've been waiting for. This is the mystical work, not the grand gestures of healing others, but the quiet reclamation of the soul. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is sitting with the younger you, the one who first learned to perform in order to survive, and whispering, you no longer have to earn love. You are already worthy. You may be extroverted by nature, or you may have become extroverted by necessity. It matters not. What matters is whether you are whole, and wholeness requires integration of the polarities, the outer and the inner, the performer and the child, the laughter and the tears. The alchemists, whose language I so deeply admired, spoke not of perfection, but of union, solutio et coagulatio, to dissolve and then to bring together. This is what I offer you now. Dissolve the mask, not to destroy it, but to know what lies beneath, and then with compassion bring both together. Let your joy include your pain. Let your laughter include your longing. Let your charisma include your need for solitude. When you speak, you heal others, but when you listen, truly listen to your own silenced parts, you begin to heal yourself. And the healing you offer from that place is not performance. It is presence. It is the sacred glow of someone who has walked through their own underworld and returned with the treasure of truth. You are not less valuable in your quiet. You are not less lovable when you are not funny. You are not less worthy when you are weeping instead of laughing. These are not flaws in your personality. They are dimensions of your humanity. The world does not need more entertainers. It needs more whole people. Extroversion without inner anchoring is like fire without a hearth that burns brightly, but consumes itself in the process. Let us return briefly to dream. Perhaps in your dream you are at a party, but no one speaks your name. You shout, but no one hears. You try to tell a joke, and it falls flat. This is the unconscious trying to free you from the compulsion of performance. It is asking you to leave the stage, not forever, but long enough to find the part of you that exists when there is no audience. Do you know who that is? Have you met them? They are not as polished, not as magnetic, but they are real, and they are the one who bleeds, the one who has waited for your return. So go inward, not to retreat, but to remember. And when you emerge again, as you will, your light will not be born of exhaustion, but of integration. It will not be a frantic attempt to matter. It will be a calm expression of your being. And perhaps then, you will finally let someone else bandage your wounds while you rest, not because you're weak, but because you're finally wise. When you walk through the crowd and feel the weight of every gaze, not because they see you, but because you have taught them how to expect you, that is when the great lie begins to tremble beneath your feet. You are not their joy machine. You are not their emotional service animal. You are not a walking solution to the discomfort of others. But you believed you had to be, didn't you? This belief is not trivial. It is ancient. It lives in the bones of the psyche like a spell cast in childhood. If love was earned through laughter, then silence became dangerous. If presence was granted when you were useful, then stillness became abandonment. The extrovert who bleeds while smiling is not foolish. They are mythic. They are the embodiment of an old survival story that no longer serves the mature soul. You see, we are shaped not only by what happens to us, but by what we must become in order to be safe. And the psyche, that deep labyrinth of dreams and symbols, does not simply let go of those old shapes. It keeps them as masks, not to deceive others, but to protect the self from being seen before it is ready to be received. But readiness is not the same as worthiness. The inner child within you, that curled and radiant fragment of the original self, is ready to be seen. It is not asking for applause. It is asking for authenticity. The archetype that lives in so many extroverted personalities is that of the wounded healer, a universal symbol found in nearly every mythic tradition. This figure appears powerful, luminous, even divine to others, but suffers in solitude. Their strength comes not despite their wound, but because of it, and yet their wound never closes until they learn to turn the healing inward. To tend to others and never to oneself is not compassion. It is a shadowed martyrdom, and the shadow, when not integrated, becomes resentment. How many of you feel the quiet ache of being needed, but never nurtured? How many of you offer comfort while craving it in secret? You may believe that your outwardness is your strength, and often it is, but when strength becomes performance, and performance becomes obligation, the soul begins to fracture. The soul that ancient word modern minds dismiss too quickly is not an idea. It is the truth of your being, buried beneath layers of roles. The soul does not speak in words, it speaks in dreams, in sudden weeping, in the exhaustion you cannot explain, in the ache that surfaces after every party, every brilliant conversation, every triumphant moment of connection. That ache is not weakness. It is a revelation. It is the soul saying, now that you have shown them joy, will you show yourself sorrow? To become whole, you must invite the full spectrum of your emotional truth back to the table. Extroverts are often trained by culture, by family, by trauma to exist in the upper register of the emotional piano. But the music of wholeness includes the lower notes: grief, longing, rage, despair. These are not enemies of the light, they are its depth. I once wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. That is still true. But let me now say this to your heart. The pain is not there to punish you. It is there to point you toward what has been abandoned. You, not the version of you that makes others laugh, not the one who always knows what to say, not the radiant sun in everyone's sky, but the one who weeps in silence, who craves to be held without being useful, who wishes just once to walk into a room and be asked not how are you, but what do you need? This is the work not to stop being generous, but to stop being invisible, to let the self that bleeds and has always bled take off the costume of charisma and be seen as a sacred human being, not a social performance. You were never meant to carry everyone. You were never meant to hold joy for the entire room. You were never meant to be the one who never breaks. This myth that you must always be okay is the most dangerous of all. It leads to the silent deaths of thousands of radiant souls who smile themselves into spiritual anemia. And so I call upon the archetype of the sacred mirror, the one who reflects without absorption. Not the wounded mirror, who reflects only to be validated. Not the broken mirror, who reflects distortion. But the sacred one, who can offer presence without self-erasure. This, dear one, is your calling now. Not to abandon your light, but to anchor it in shadow. Not to reject your joy, but to let it be born of truth, not performance. You may ask, but who will I be if I am not the funny one, the bright one, the glue? You will be free. You will be whole. You will be someone whose presence heals not because it compensates, but because it embodies. And embodiment is the most radical thing an extrovert can offer in a world that rewards their fragmentation. Do not be afraid to bleed. Do not be afraid to speak of the wound before it becomes a disease of disconnection. Do not be afraid to stop shining long enough to be restored. The sun, too, sets, and in that darkness, the stars, those long hidden lights of the deeper self, finally appear. You do not need to be everyone's sanctuary to be worthy of rest. Let those words pierce you. Let them enter not as a command, but as an invitation. You have been so tirelessly attuned to others, to their voices, their moods, their needs, that the sound of your own soul has become almost foreign, like a once familiar melody, now muffled by years of static. But you have not lost it. You have only tuned your frequency outward for too long. And now you are being summoned inward. This is not regression. This is the path of return. And every path of return begins in the wilderness. You may feel disoriented when you start listening to your inner voice again. It may feel quieter than the laughter you've mastered, duller than the charisma you've sharpened. But that is only because it has waited in exile for too long. Like a neglected child, it no longer shouts. It whispers, and only the honest soul can hear it. Can you hear it now? Can you hear that soft voice buried beneath all the roles and routines? It does not ask you to perform. It asks you to remember not who you've been for others, but who you were before the world taught you to entertain it. Remember that child That child did not perform. That child was not a healer, not a helper, not a social miracle. Just a being feeling, sensing, longing, needing, breathing. And that child still lives within you. Yes, even now, especially now. You see, in the language of archetypes, you have been possessed by the hero, that noble part of the psyche who believes salvation lies in usefulness. The hero walks into chaos and restores order. The hero earns love by bearing burdens, but the hero, when overgrown, becomes the servant, the one who forgets their own name while chanting the names of others. I do not ask you to kill the hero. I ask you to free them from the compulsion of proving their worth, because the soul does not ask you to earn anything. The soul is not a ledger of how many people you've helped. It is a well buried beneath performance, waiting for you to return with the courage not to be extraordinary but to be whole. You were not born to impress. You were born to incarnate, to enter the body fully, to feel all the feelings, not only the socially acceptable ones, to cry without apology, to retreat without shame, to ask for love without wrapping it in a joke. This is where the transformation begins, when you no longer confuse visibility with intimacy. You may be seen by many, but known by few. And that loneliness, that cold echo that follows you after every bright encounter, is not a defect. It is the soul's alarm bell. It is the message from the self, the great regulating center of the unconscious, telling you that you've abandoned the inner temple for the marketplace. But temples are where truth lives. The inner temple is not loud. It does not crave applause. It holds space for silence. And in that silence, the bleeding stops. Not because you fixed it, but because you finally listened to it. L'étus descend briefly into the image of the labyrinth. You are Theseus, the brave one, threading through the maze. But you are also the Minotaur, the beast hidden at the center, misunderstood, wounded, longing for release. To heal, you must become both. The extrovert is the one who ventures into the world. The soul is the one who waits in the center of the maze, holding a memory. You've forgotten that love does not require performance. And when the two meet, the one who left and the one who stayed, wholeness begins. You need not renounce your gifts. You are still a healer, still radiant, still capable of entering a room and making it bloom. But now, let that light come from within, not as a performance, but as a pulse, not as a mask, but as a mirror. When you begin to show your real self, the one that trembles, bleeds, and longs, you may lose some of the spectators who loved your performance. Let them go. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to be known. The mystic's path is not one of grand gestures. It is a quiet, courageous descent into the self. And there, in the sacred dark, the bleeding extrovert finally finds not just rest but resurrection, arising not into performance but into presence. You do not need to be everything for everyone. You need to be everything for the one within who has been waiting for you to finally come home. So now we stand at the precipice, the place between who you've been and who you are becoming. You have worn the mask so long, it feels like skin. You have smiled through pain so often, it has become reflex. You have saved others from drowning while letting your own lungs fill quietly with silence. But the ocean within you has never judged your denial. It has waited. That's the beauty of the soul. It does not punish. It waits. It waits with immeasurable patience until you are ready, not just to help, not just to serve, but to belong to yourself again. This moment, this turning inward, is not abandonment of others. It is reunion with your own center, because you cannot give from the wound and expect the world to fill the void. The more you abandon yourself in the name of service, the more bitter the service becomes. That bitterness, buried beneath your laughter, is the taste of self-forgetting. But now, let us imagine something else. Let us imagine what it might feel like to offer joy, not as a distraction, but as an overflow, to speak, not to please, but because the truth moves through you like music, to gather others in light, not because you're afraid of being alone, but because you have finally befriended your solitude. This is the new archetype rising within you, not the wounded healer who bleeds in silence, but the integrated self who offers energy with grounded presence. This self does not perform, it emanates. You do not need to retreat forever, but you must return to the center. This is individuation, the sacred task of becoming whole. It is not a rejection of your extroverted gifts. It is a reclamation of your missing half. You are the mirror and the face, the sun and the soil, the laughter and the longing. You are not a contradiction. You are a cosmos, but your cosmos has gravity. You must live from your center, not your surface. I urge you now to feel, without flinching, the sorrow you've buried under celebration, the exhaustion you've masked as enthusiasm, the hunger to be understood not for what you do, but for who you are when you are doing nothing at all. That self-raw, real, wordless, that is your foundation. Let that be what speaks. Next time you enter the room, let that be what smiles, what jokes, what connects. Let your charisma be rooted in truth, not survival. Let your magnetism be born of wholeness, not the desperate ache to be enough. And yes, some will not recognize this new you. They have loved your mask more than your essence. Let them go. Others fewer, perhaps, but truer, will feel something shift. They will meet your eyes and feel not entertainment, but presence. They will not just laugh with you. They will breathe with you, sit with you, listen. When you have nothing clever to say, these are your soul kin, and you, healed extrovert, bleeding no more, will begin to know rest not as a reward, but as a right. You will find new strength in not speaking first. You will feel intimacy in moments of shared silence. You will discover joy that does not fade the moment you're alone again. Because it is not borrowed, it is yours. This is a fruit of individuation, the restoration of the self to the center of your life, not in selfishness, but in sacred alignment. You will not love less. You will love cleaner. You will not give less. You will give without bleeding. And when you do bleed for yes, the soul still aches, still cracks. You will know how to hold yourself. You will no longer wait for someone to notice. You will no longer beg for mirrors in broken rooms. You will be your own witness. And from there, everything changes. Because an extrovert who no longer leaks is an extrovert who radiates. You will no longer need the room to reflect your worth. You will carry it within you. As al giet flame steady, so verein alive. And in that sovereignty, you will do what you've always longed to do, not just heal others, but be healed. So I leave you now with no answers. Only this invitation: go home, not to your house, to yourself. And when you arrive, you will find not a stranger, but a sacred friend, the one who has always waited, silently, patiently, lovingly, for you to stop bleeding in secret and finally say, I deserve to be whole, to